Hello, I am Endlessness and welcome back to Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at Cid, his launch weapons and what he has to offer as a new character unit. And Cid comes with 9 launch weapons beside his exclusive Limit Break banner, and also has a guild weapon and ultimate weapon, and I just wanted to analyze what he can offer as that new character unit. Flyer has a very nice P attack stat with HP and boost physical ability potency, and this weapon basically is a 3 AEB diamond sigil breaker that can also apply stop. However, it applies stop only one time if you use this ability for the first time, so it's nothing really other than 3 AEB diamond sigil, which I guess isn't bad, but it takes one weapon slot. Scimitar looks much better, I think, because this is a buffing support weapon that's most optimal on an ice team. It has very nice stats with increased heal, very good R abilities with lowered heal but increased buff debuff extension points, and most importantly it increases both physical and magic attack with mid potency, and it also increases ice damage, so 3 buffs in a single cast. And it's a single target buff, and at OB6 max potency upgrades into high, so if you cast this twice on a character you get all 3 high potency buffs. And I think this is definitely one of Cid's best weapons to use on him, or as a sub weapon where you can get 15 heal and 25 buff debuff extension, which I think is great because now heal our ability is in a much better spot with most support characters having increased heal on their ultimate weapon, so you want to prioritize other abilities. Radiant Lance has a bit lowered P attack stat with only 616, but those abilities aren't bad at all with 31 attack and 52 boost ability potency, so it looks like a nice generic weapon that you could use on either physical or magic builds. And it's also one of Cid's only 2 weapons that have a sigil boost slot, and this weapon deals 750% physical non-elemental damage to a single enemy, and it also increases command gauge by 20%. So I guess this weapon could be useful on some specific battles where our command gauge has a, for example, 70% debuff and you just want to reach max stance faster, but other than that, I don't see much use for it. Viper Halberd is another interesting weapon. Yes, the stats aren't great with barely 500 attack, but look at those abilities. It's the first weapon in a game that boosts physical and magic defense, which could be very helpful, especially for Angel if you're going to use him as a tank. But other than that, command ability is just a self buff, and Cid will buff his own physical and magic defense, and those buffs start with mid potency per cast, and at OB6 they upgrade into high. And I'm not sure, perhaps it will work in the future for Cid, but I think this would be a perfect sub weapon for Angel, who can use provoke to tank those hits, but for Cid I don't really see it being a useful C ability. Partisan is a great sub weapon for a magic wind DPS because 640 M attack stat, great. And look at those abilities, 31 magic attack and 52 wind potency. Amazing, because that increased wind potency will benefit you a lot. And it's clearly a sub weapon because command ability deals 520% AoE magic wind damage, so like all other AoE launch weapons, it's meant to be used as a sub weapon. Next is Poleaxe, which has lowered stats but 62 HP and 26 boost ability potency. Very high HP, as we only have very few weapons in a game with such high amount of HP. And then it deals 540% physical non-elemental damage to all enemies and decreases their physical and magic attack with mid potency, but at OB6 that max potency upgrades into high. So Cid got a Kuja weapon with very high HP, and this command ability has no HP requirements to successfully debuff. It's a very good weapon, I think. Trident has barely 616 P attack stats, which isn't very high, but it's another Sid weapon with 62 HP points and a bit lower 26 buff debuff extension, and then it deals 620% non-elemental damage to a single enemy, and if Sid is above 70% HP, it also applies poison status. And upon first use it will also apply stop on the enemy, but it's the same case as on all the other weapons. Stop will only apply on the first use. And there aren't many bosses that you can poison, so it might be a good weapon for very specific situations, but otherwise you can just use it as a stat stack. Slash Lance also has just barely 604 P attack stats, but interesting are abilities with 31 attack and 52 buff debuff extension, and it deals 540% physical non-elemental damage to all enemies, while increasing physical defense for all allies. And this buff initially starts as mid bouncy per cast, but at OB6 it upgrades into high, and it's not bad, but it isn't something we don't have on other characters. But I think it might be a very nice sub-weapon on a support DPS thanks to that generic attack and increased buff debuff extension points. Now Sid's Spear, and it has 628 P attack stats with very high 62 physical attack and 26 boost ability potency, and it deals 750% physical non-elemental damage to a single enemy, and upon first use it applies stop. And it's the same as Sid's other weapons that can apply stop, it works only upon the first use. And I think those abilities could make it a good stat stick in those few situations where you have a physical DPS with P attack for allies in main slots, so you need a few sub weapons to max out that P attack, but as a weapon on Sid, I don't really see it being that amazing. I have already reviewed Rocket Lance in a separate video, but I think it has potential to be an amazing sub-weapon for a support DPS or a character that has buffs or debuffs to make them last longer while also boosting the attack of your main DPS. And it's the only weapon that can apply Enfeeble status while debuffing ice resistance. And Enfeeble sounds great because it applies to all debuffs on a boss, but it's most optimal on ice boss, because if the boss isn't weak to ice, then you have 1 out of 2 weapon slots taken just to add 1 more tier of debuffs. Now Sid's ultimate spear, and it also has quite low stats, but it has both debuff extension and magic defense boost, which is very nice. And the command ability increases limit gauge by 20% and casts a high bouncy physical attack buff for a single ally, which isn't bad at all. 3 physical attack buff and a quite big chunk of limit gauge for free. I think it's great. Then Sid got a mop, and I honestly like how they are keeping the theme of most skill weapons looking funny or silly, but the stats are alright. And this weapon boosts earth resistance and physical defense for allies, and it's the 3rd guild weapon with those exact abilities. And then the command gauge deals 540% physical non-elemental damage to all enemies, and only upon first use it applies stop. And lastly, Sid's gear voucher outfit has 8 HP and 8 MDef, which overall I think is a very nice alternative if you haven't got Sid's banner outfits. Gear Voucher's outfit aren't as good as banner outfits, but they are definitely better than those default outfits. And while MDef won't be very useful on a physical boss, at least you have some extra HP. And this outfit would cost you 1500 blue crystals, since now you can buy those vouchers in the store. So I think it's not bad at all. And then we have Sid's limit breaks, and his base limit break is boost jump, and at level 5 it deals 1800% combined non-elemental damage, and upon first use it applies stop. It's not bad, but stop being applied only on first use really hurts in my opinion, because first stop has a very short duration and this limit break has a long cast time, so I don't see a reason why stop is being applied only on first cast. Dynamite is Sid's second limit break with a very fast charge time, and it deals 450% combined damage to all enemies at level 5, and it increases physical attack and magic attack for allies with mid potency, but max potency is mid only, so you can't apply it on another debuff to get it too high, but you can use it very often, so I guess mid potency attack buffs are fine here. And then Sid's third limit break, Hyper Jump, deals 1000% combined damage to a single enemy at level 1, and it applies stop status. And if you noticed, it doesn't have a first use condition, meaning that every time you cast this limit break, the boss will be stopped for a short period of time, but this limit break charges with 1800 speed, meaning you won't be able to cast it very often. But this limit break is the only thing that can apply stop multiple times in a battle. So overall, I have very mixed feelings about Sid, because I was expecting another character with a crucial, insanely good mechanic like Vincent boosts his limit gauge, which I consider kind of overpowered, because he can get his long charging limit break faster than some characters can get summons ready, and also his every banner is kind of OP, or Angel with Provoke and Veil mechanics making him an amazing tank, while both abilities were available in his launch limit break banner weapon. You can still make a very good Angel from Teemo with his standard weapons available in the game, and it still works. So I expected the same thing for Sid, but personally I am kind of disappointed by his mechanics. And don't get me wrong, I think he's a good character and will definitely be useful or crucial in just very specific battles, and by that I mean specifically solo rankings. You could max out his buff debuff extension with weapons, which would extend the effect duration to 200%, and that should make his stop mechanic from 8 seconds to around 24 seconds. And in that time you won't have to worry about damage taken, and also in that time you could apply Enfeeble to do even more damage, or you could use, for example, Radiant Lance to boost your command gauge by 20% per cast, which would also be very useful in those battle rankings that more often than not slow down command gauge by 70%. And looking at Sid's launch kits is where I can see Sid being best at, being this solo battle or dungeon ranking centered character where those battles are short and his abilities could be really useful and benefit you a lot to increase those scores. And in those solo rankings I can definitely see Sid being required, especially for whales and krakens fighting for those highest ranks. But for me personally, Sid, well, at least currently, doesn't have anything I could desire or would make me want to choose him over other characters in a battle. It's just my perspective, and I'm not a player who prioritizes ranking events over other content. I just do them for my own satisfaction and for awards, but I don't particularly even enjoy battle rankings because of how repetitive they are. So for me, yes, Enfeeble sounds great, with it being able to further increase the tier of those debuffs, but unlike Angeal's Veil and Provoke, Enfeeble currently is only on Sid's limited banner, and perhaps it might appear on another weapon in the future. As for Stop, I think it's disappointing to say the least, because it only applies on first use, so once in a battle, and his third limit break is the only ability that can apply it multiple times. But because of how slow that charge time is, you won't be able to apply it very often. However, I think if Sid's weapons could apply stop every time, even for that minimum 3 seconds, then I think it would be just more useful, instead of it just being this one-time use mechanic and then the weapon becomes useless afterwards. And then his other launch weapons also don't have anything else or better than other characters, and because of that, personally I can't see much value in him. But again, that's only my own perspective, and I don't mean to say that he's bad or useless. It's just I can't see him being useful for myself. And I think Sid might likely be the new Cait Sith, where he is just sometimes very rarely useful, and that's mostly just in ranking events, and that's it. Yes, he can allow you to do some things better with his mechanics, but I see it as a more of a convenience kit that will be more useful in those very specific situations, but you still should be able to clear the battle without it anyway. But of course, perhaps I'm missing something or I'm just wrong on that, and I would love to hear your opinion on Sid and what you think of him. But yeah, that would be all. As I said, I would love to hear your opinion, and perhaps you think differently than me, and in the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next one.